Every time you watch a...
It's part of the appeal of a podcast.
Yeah, like people fumbling before the thing
It's
starts.
not the mainstream media, right?
What you do is you
Everything's
should be
choreographed.
I think we're live right now.
Oh,
I think we've actually been live. He's giving us the point, but I think we've actually been live because I'm hearing myself inside of my computer, which I will now mute.
Good morning, good afternoon, fellow crypto freaks. I love saying that because it's kind of a weird space.
Freaks of the
right?
industry, of
Yeah.
a freaky industry. But yes, good morning if you're in California, good noon or good afternoon in many other places. Got interesting stuff to talk about this week, Brett.
Yeah, last week we touched on the fork, or two of our other guys, but that was right before the fork.
Yeah.
And there's
Now
always
we're
drama before, during, and after. So the fork, the Bitcoin Cash fork, just happened, and we've had a pretty eventful, I guess, 24 hours. Has it been 24 hours? Yeah.
It's been almost exactly.
Yeah.
Just a little bit over 24 hours that the fork is still in progress. Things haven't really, the dust hasn't settled yet. But we'll be talking about that for sure today. If you guys have any questions specifically about the fork, we're happy to go ahead and answer that.
Let's do a little recap for people.
I'll do some intros. Maybe some people are out there just
Okay.
tuning in, don't know who the hell we are. You know, and
Ooh,
so
a lot of
Brett,
people
you
don't
wanna
know
kick
who
off?
I am.
Yeah. You want to kick off?
Hi, my name is Brett Musser. I work at Edge, and I focus on business development and a lot of copywriting. And I don't do any programming or coding. I'll leave that up to the smarter
the
guys
devs.
in the room. Yeah,
Just smarter at a different thing.
exactly.
That's all it is.
That's what I
you
keep
know?
telling myself.
Yeah, exactly. So my name is Paul, CEO and co-founder of Edge. One of the developers part-time and business development, all the stuff that a CEO should or sometimes shouldn't be doing is on my plate.
He does everything. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, I do everything poorly. A little of everything.
Yeah, I'll recap on some of the narrative, and then we'll get some of your thoughts on kind of what's going on right now.
Okay.
So for people that don't know, Bitcoin Cash was a hard fork of the original Bitcoin blockchain, which even wording it that way can be a little contentious because, who defines what Bitcoin is kind of a touchy subject, and it's not always so clear because, this is kind of a subjective money, and people have different views on, what Bitcoin is or should be. But anyways, Bitcoin Cash was a fork last year in August 2017, and the disagreement was over scaling. So there was one group that wanted to kind of keep the status quo as it was, more or less, and then another group, which was the Bitcoin Cash group, that wanted to make the blocks in the blockchain bigger so they could fit more transactions through.
Yep, exactly.
And then recently there's been a split in the Bitcoin Cash community. And we have two competing implementations. So on one side, we have an implementation called Bitcoin ABC, and that's basically the software that everyone's running on the network. And then on the other side, we have something called Bitcoin SV, which is Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. And on that side, we have a very famous and I should say infamous person named Dr. Craig Wright. Who has claimed that he was Satoshi. Some people believe that, a lot of people don't, and he's been derided in the industry for kind of fake evidence that he's, kind of put forward, claiming that he is Satoshi. But his implementation, basically, some of the things that he's doing, he's making the blocks even bigger than they were in the original fork in August. So in August, they went from a base block size of 1 megabyte to 32, or no, they went to 8 first.
8 first,
right. And then they've been at 32 for a few months now, and he wanted to bring it back up. He wanted to bring it up to 128.
Right.
And then he was also trying to bring in some old opcodes, which we could say for people that don't know what those are, kind of new instructions or new ways of doing things.
Ways of programming the money.
Yeah.
Yep.
That were in Satoshi's original, I guess, how would you call it? Code, right? Yeah,
code,
wanted to bring back some old operations. And then on the Bitcoin ABC side, we have some big players like Bitcoin.com, Bitmain, more or less, and a lot of other exchanges and operators in the space that were some of the what were they trying to put in there? Check data sig verify.
Check data sig verify,
one opcode there
allows you to do some types of similar to smart contract operations. You get to get information into the blockchain from like oracles.
Yeah.
And so that allows you to make operations that are based on that data. That was definitely an area of contention. One of the bigger areas of contention was what was called canonical transaction ordering.
Yeah.
So basically making transactions ordered basically alphabetically by their transaction ID versus the dependency chain of this transaction spends money from this previous transaction, which spends money from another previous transaction. That's the way currently Bitcoin and now Bitcoin SV. And a lot of the forks of Bitcoin use the non-canonical ordering. Bitcoin Cash with the ABC line uses this new canonical, basically alphabetical ordering.
Now, I know before the fork, it was a very interesting situation because Bitcoin SV had a lot of the hashing power on their side. Even though they didn't have necessarily a lot of organizations on their side, they had hashing power, which is very important in terms of, I guess, dominating the narrative and securing the network. But as post-fork, we've seen that Bitcoin ABC is able to produce a longer chain, and they've been ahead of SV. So we know that there's been some extra hash power that has moved over to Bitcoin ABC that wasn't necessarily there before.
Right. So that's an interesting topic of discussion because a lot of people are using different metrics to gauge like who's winning in this hash war, in this battle, or this split. And in the end, there might not be a winner per se. It might just simply be two chains that continue on their own. But from the viewpoint of metrics, if you wanted to measure who's kind of winning, like the point system.
I guess there's a leader right now, not necessarily a clear winner. Is that a good way to?
There's no clear winner. There's a leader, but there's a leader depending on what you're measuring.
Okay.
So from the measurement of price, best we can tell is that ABC is leading that charge. And that's depending on which exchange you look at. Some exchanges haven't even differentiated between these two coins. They're just giving a price, which is the lump sum of both of them. Some have actually split. I've been looking at Poloniex, where we're seeing about a 2-to-1, a 3-to-1 split in price with ABC having the higher value and SV having the lower value. From the viewpoint of hashing power, we're seeing, I think it ranged from about 70-30 ABC to SV to as close as about 60-40. I think at one point I looked at it was like 57% to 43%. Really close on the hashing power, and that's contrast to what we saw pre-fork. But realize that pre-fork, you don't actually know what hashing power is going to the different chains. It's just what you guesstimate based on who is claimed verbally to support a certain chain. And how much hashing power they currently have. But what we have seen is it looks like hashing power that wasn't even on BCH to begin with, pre-fork, is now getting directed to ABC.
I think I was talking to William, our chief architect before, and he was, I can't confirm or deny, but he was saying that Bitcoin.com, they mine Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, that they basically turned their hashing power from Bitcoin to kind of protecting their, adding that to the hash power of ABC.
No, they did actually. They did do that. Yep.
Which they economically, or I guess rationally, in the short term, they're going to be losing money, but long term they want to basically solidify Bitcoin ABC as Bitcoin Cash and kind of, I guess it's a battle of billionaires in a lot of different ways.
Who can outlast one billionaire to another, and it's an interesting battle because while they redirected the hashing power, they made it such that if you were signed up using their hashing contracts to mine Bitcoin, they were still going to give you the return rate that you would have gotten, as if they were mining Bitcoin. But they're incurring the additional cost because it is far less profitable right now to mine either of the Bitcoin Cash chains because right now there is a war and people are putting a lot more hashing power into it than there is currently price value in it. And so people and companies like Roger Ver and Bitcoin.com are pretty much both trying to protect the chain that they care about, but also in a way speculating and saying that by protecting it and putting a lot of hashing power in it, we're obviously going to be mining a whole lot of that coin, but hopefully give it a whole lot more future worth and future value. And if the dust were to settle and if Bitcoin.com was successful and let's say SV died off, I could imagine that yes, the price of BCH would dramatically increase over its current price now. And all the coins that they did mine would be tremendously more valuable, hopefully make up for what they lost in opportunity by not mining BTC.
Yeah, and I think that's the analog to war is very applicable because, you're going to take a lot of short-term losses and it doesn't necessarily short-term profitable, no matter even if you're on the winning side, right? You're going to have bodies, so to speak.
Yep.
But you see a lot of wars in the physical realm, right, where the Union outlasts the South because they have more resources, or maybe World War II, the Allies basically just had more, more power, more troops, more brute force, right?
Yeah.
And they just beat down the other side. So that's what we're seeing now when people talk about a hash war. People aren't necessarily making money; they're actually losing money. But
that's true in every war.
But they want to be exactly.
In every war, you lose money short term.
Exactly, but they want to make sure they lose war at a slower pace, or make sure the other one runs out of resources at a faster pace.
Yeah, and like wars, and I like that analogy. There's kind of the attrition part where you just have to outlast the enemy, and then there's like the strategic strikes. And I don't know if that we've seen that yet in this war, like the strategic strikes.
Tactics versus strategy.
Some of those strategic strikes in a hash war would be doing things such as trying to redirect some of your hashing energy to the opposing chain for the sake of disrupting it. And there's been a lot of threat from kind of the SV side in the camp, and Craig Wright saying that he would redirect a lot of hashing power to reorg the BCH chain, where people that have spent money, it's been confirmed, suddenly that just goes back. And so there was some theory when a lot of blocks were not getting found for SV. There was some theory that what they were actually doing was secretly mining a bunch of BCH ABC blocks, but holding them back until they actually had a longer chain, and then publishing them to BCH ABC, basically reorging a whole bunch of blocks without you realizing it. But it doesn't look like that's come to fruition.
What's the reason for them doing that?
Basically to disrupt the BCH chain, make it where people that thought they were spending money and it was confirmed suddenly got reorged, and the money got double spent, or just really simply reversed. So that's what you call kind of like the as opposed to the war of attrition, the more directed surgical attack.
Surgical,
we're going to attack and make you really, really hit it where it kind of hurts. But in the meantime, it's looking like a war of attrition, because each of these billionaires is burning a lot of money, and who's just basically going to give up first is what it seems like. And at some point, even if one gives up first, doesn't mean that the chain dies. I think we've seen in the crypto world, chains don't die. They don't go to zero for the most part. They can survive at a very small amount of hash rate, but they can at least get to the point where they're less relevant, and they, with respect to a split, a clear leader retains the ticker symbol, right? That's kind of the fight. The fight's for the ticker symbol, because that's what prior users will have support for in the pre-existing wallets and exchanges and payment processors, is that original ticker symbol. So I think that's the main thing, in the same sense that, when BCH split from BTC was able to retain the ticker symbol, as well as all the compatibility with wallets and exchanges and the mind share. Disregard whether or not the community wanted or saw. It's just that retaining the ticker symbol is probably the biggest definition of kind of a win.
Yeah. So right now, Bitcoin Cash is definitely in disarray because you have multiple ticker symbols going, and
right.
Whenever you split up a monetary network, the network effects. The market is rightfully punishing Bitcoin Cash community for not kind of keeping it together.
Right.
But in your opinion, do you think they could? Is this, I guess, irreparable? Is it something that can be overcome?
Yeah, I think as things settle down and there's a clear owner of the BCH ticker symbol, the market just kind of does what it would normally do. It redirects funds and interest into those various currencies. So if you believe that SV is the proper chain, even if it's becomes 5 or 10%, then that's what people put money in. They try to drive the adoption of that chain. And the same thing for ABC. If that ends up being the ticker symbol, then people will put money and effort into that chain and where it's going. Now, of course, the two efforts are effectively split. The big measurement that people are going to have is, will the combined value of the two effectively be equivalent to what it used to be before, or greater than what it used to be before? So that, I think, is still a bit of an early decision. We have people that commented like, yeah, BCH is kind of fucked, and Binance has claimed that the BCH ticker symbol is dead. Now, that's one exchange. They're a very, very big one.
Yep.
But I think time still, I don't know that is a fully long-term decided decision, in the sense that if a ton of other exchanges, if a Coinbase and Bitstamp and whatnot still claim that, okay, BCH, this is what BCH is, then will others follow suit? There is a chance. You know, just like early on, I think BCH was called BCC, and some exchanges just had that. Does that mean that's what it ends up being long term? Not necessarily. It hasn't been well decided enough yet.
I have a question for you because I've heard different terminology to explain chain strength. So yeah, the difference between a longer or a stronger chain, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the difference?
A lot of people are looking at the website coin.dance to see kind of like which of these chains was quote unquote winning, and they used the metric of how many blocks ahead one chain was versus another, and almost consistently it was either always even or BCH ABC was well ahead, anywhere from 3-5 to I think as high as like 45 blocks ahead. But the reason why that's not a very good measure is because of the very quick difficulty adjustment that both of these chains have, right? In Bitcoin, we don't change difficulty for about 2 weeks. With BCH, they change difficulty almost dynamically, like minutes and hours, very quickly. So what that effectively means is even if you have two chains that are at the exact same block height, right? And it looks like they're even. The difficulty that one chain may have had to get to that block height might have been sufficiently less. Like they're just mining easier blocks.
You're not comparing apples to apples.
You're not comparing apples to apples. So really what you want is what's called the strongest chain from the viewpoint of comparing how much hashing power has gone into a chain. So strongest chain is more so defined by not the number of blocks, but the difficulty that went into each block summed up across all the blocks. You know, you add all the blocks, the difficulty of all the blocks, and that's kind of your total difficulty time and with the number of blocks. And so in that sense, it's looking clearly like ABC does have a stronger chain than
SV. Yeah, because you could, theoretically, you could have a really, really long chain with a lot of blocks, but there's hardly any hashing power behind it. You know, because the difficulty is so low. And someone could just spin up a mining farm and bring it down because it's doesn't matter really how many blocks there are. Right.
The number of blocks is not very relevant. So in the short term, it can show some kind of trend. Now, from the fact that I saw SV behind in blocks, and they had less hashing power, that's actually really telling. Like you got two things. You've already got lower hashing power, so your difficulty should be lower, and you're still behind in blocks. That seems to imply that it's almost like a double whammy. Right, because one can balance the other, but if they're both behind, then it seems to imply that ABC is definitely significantly in the lead as far as hashing power. But once again, I feel like this is a temporary measure. In a way, what hashing power does is it gives almost like a mental signal to buyers as far as what asset they want to hold. Like if you saw 95% of the hashing power on one chain, 5% on the other, as a holder, you might be inclined, as an independent, like I don't really care which one.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just kind of as an investor, you might be inclined to hold the stronger hashing power coin because it has more security. But in the end, you know, with this war of attrition, eventually hashing power has to hash what's most profitable. So we'll see some hash power go back to BTC, and if ABC retains that higher dollar value than SV, then you'll see more hashing power sit comfortably on that ABC chain and some hashing power of SV leave because they just simply can't afford it. You just run out of money. You've got to be motivated by the return on investment. And so that's where things will, I think that's kind of be the measure of where we're at steady state, is when hashing power matches price. Until then it's a war and battle. And just like you said about real war, you're willing to lose bodies and take a short-term loss.
For sure.
So that's when you know the war is over, is when that price starts to match.
Now, we mentioned before what the two sides were, and I put out in a blog post, telling our users that, basically we supported Bitcoin ABC from the beginning, and we were going to continue to support them, and we would treat SV as another chain, so to speak.
Right.
Can you give us a little reasoning on why we were running them to begin with, and why we stuck with them? Yeah.
We stuck with the
ABC. Yeah.
So some of the core values that we had in Edge to begin with was kind of a diversity of nodes and development environment. And so from what we saw in the ABC side, we had at least two, if not three different implementations, XT, ABC, and Bitcoin Unlimited that were supporting that chain. And on the other side, we had one monolithic company with one node implementation that definitely had a much more, I won't call it violent, but aggressive nature. Yeah. And so that wasn't in the heart of what we were looking to support necessarily. Now, granted, the community in the end decides. If people put their money into SV, that's showing that there's a broader community that wanted to exist, And if the hashing power continues to exist there, then it's something that we will be supporting. And so it's looking today, so people probably want an update from us as far as like what is Edge going to be doing, what is our wallet going to be supporting. By default, what you have in Edge as BCH is the ABC chain, but realize that there's no replay protection on either of these chains today. Meaning if you go to spend your BCH, you'll almost certainly be spending both ABC and SV with a send transaction going out. So look for an upcoming release. We're looking hopefully within the next couple weeks, a release that will protect each of the chains, meaning that when you go to send BCH, you'll be sending on the ABC chain. You can then split your wallet into an SV wallet, and then when you go to spend that, you'll only be spending the SV. And so this is obviously in high demand with respect to the BCH fork from BTC. This is a bit more challenging, and why we warn users, don't move your money if you don't absolutely have to at this point, because of that risk of replay. Replay protection has not been mandatorily implemented in these two forks, right? They're not mandatory. Wallets actually have to add special opcodes and instructions into a transaction to make it such that it only works on one chain and not the other. And one of the reasons why we're not implementing this yet, we're keeping a close eye on the network, is that there was a threat by Craig Wright saying that if you implemented this special opcode so that your transactions on the ABC chain don't get put on the SV chain, he had threatened to take the money from those transactions and give it to the miners on the SV chain. Right, so your money on SV would basically disappear. You just lose that money. And so we want to keep a close eye on how good on that threat he ends up being. Like, does that actually end up pushing through? And if we are able to safely protect people's funds on both chains, then we can implement the right opcodes. So there's a few other options. If he does go good on that threat, we have a couple other options, but they're far more complicated.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're kind of keeping a close pulse on this first. So hopefully that kind of keeps people up to date. We're anxious to be able to get BCH usable again and functional, get people split into the chain that they want to support. But we're keeping a close eye on it in the meantime.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, for sure it is. I want to make sure we get to we're at 12:30 now. We started a bit late, so we'll go a few minutes over. But I want to get to the questions that people asked. One that's completely unrelated to the BCH hard fork, which happy to kind of switch gears a little bit. So Ken Bozek asked, are we going to ever add support for collectibles, ERC 721s? And so Ken, great question. I get this question a lot. I know there's a few wallets out there that do support 721 collectibles. One of my takes is, while I kind of would like to add it, I feel like 721s, because they're non-fungible, almost each one wants its own user experience. All right? If you want rare Pepes, or you want CryptoKitties, or you want 721s that are seats to a ball game or to a concert, there's almost a different interface needed for each of those collectibles, right? And as a general purpose wallet whose purpose is to send and receive money with a classic transaction history and a balance, it doesn't feel like a good fit. Now, I know that there are wallets out there that do support it with kind of the URL that points to an image that you can show inside of the wallet, but it's not an optimal experience. It's a really poor experience. It's almost like just this bare bones trader experience, but you don't experience the collectible. So one of the theories I had is we'd much rather see those apps, those kind of projects on 721 have their own app where they highlight the experience of that collectible, whether it be like a Magic the Gathering game card with nice graphics and maybe even a game built into it. And instead, we integrate Edge into those apps where your account on Edge secures keys that are not just money, but they're also 721 collectibles in another application. You can kind of like single sign on into it. And so that's what we'd like to see going forward versus us putting in support for 721s, but rather there be apps really, really focused on the user experience of each of the 721 collectibles.
Are there a lot of the examples for the ERC 721 collectibles are kind of, I don't want to be dismissive, but kind of silly, right? Or like CryptoKitties, but I feel like they could be more serious.
No,
or like
I mentioned, so like tickets are a classic example of a non-fungible token. Like your seat in this one spot in the ball game has a completely different value than that person who is right at the 50-yard line, right?
Yeah.
So all of those being very different value, they're non-fungible. But imagine where you had an app that gave you a 3D view from where your seat is, right? And then it showed you a seat map from the top. Like, all of that would be the experience that I'd want to build for an app that deployed and allowed people to send, receive, buy tickets as a token. So that to me is an example of why it's like, well,
True.
what would we show in our app? Well, we'd show seat 23, blah, 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 and there's not really a good experience around it. But it's talked about. We just haven't moved on it because of that little sticky point of the user experience, which we're really, really key about. One other question that came through, we probably have time for one more. Will the checkpoints that ABC is adding, can't it still be reorged starting block 1 after that checkpoint? True, yes, you can still reorg even after a checkpoint, and realize that checkpoint is still something that you put in and opt to utilize as a node operator. So ABC happens to have that default inside of their code. However, it's still a consensus thing where if you run ABC with the right rule sets without that checkpoint, then you could get reorged.
Can you explain what they're looking for in that checkpoint?
So the checkpoint basically says, okay, at this point, this block height, this is absolutely the state of the blockchain from this point and beforehand.
They basically take a snapshot.
They kind of take a snapshot. And we say that even if you come up with a longer, stronger chain, if it reorgs anything prior to this snapshot, we're not going to accept it. Right? In theory, if somebody has been mining Bitcoin since 2010 on hardware that we don't know exists, and they have a chain that's at like block 1 million today, right? And we just don't see it, and they go and publish all those blocks like right now. In theory, that would reorg all of Bitcoin, right, from block 1.
If they had the appropriate hashing power.
Well, they have had the appropriate hashing power. They've actually been mining, but in secret.
Okay, and just not publishing it
not
at the
publishing
same difficulty level.
At the same or higher.
Okay,
Ideally
yeah,
higher.
higher. Yeah.
Ideally higher difficulty level.
That'd be a lot of power.
It'd be a lot of hashing
in
power.
the dark. Yeah,
in the dark and not making any money on it.
Yeah.
Right, because your coins aren't valid anywhere. But then you just publish all these blocks, and suddenly everyone's transactions since the beginning of time get reorged, and effectively disappear, and the whole chain gets.
Is it the same as a selfish mining attack?
Selfish mining tries to do that on a shorter, smaller scale.
But
yeah, same idea.
Yeah.
But on a shorter, smaller scale. And so these checkpoints effectively say, okay, as of this point, I don't care how strong of a chain you have, you can't rewind anything.
We're not accepting it.
We're just simply not going to accept it, because you were doing something malicious or hiding or whatnot is what the theory is. And there's a lot of opponents to this model. They say, oh, that's cheating. That's not Satoshi. That's not Nakamoto consensus, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, sure, kind of. But at the same time, once again, if you run a node and that's the rule on your node, then you're choosing to adopt that rule.
Exactly.
Right? You don't have to. And so to me,
that's fair play.
It's fair play. That's my take. It's fair play.
All this stuff is up in the air. It's hash wars, right?
It's hash wars. It's node wars, whatever you want to call it. But it's
and if you don't like it, you don't have to run that implementation. You don't have to hold it.
You could run one that simply doesn't use the checkpoint. You could or just rip out the checkpoint from your node implementation. So I'm not against that as a rule, right? But to answer the question that Emma B had posted, not Emma B, this was Notre Dame had posted, yes, you can still get reorged up until that checkpoint, so for sure.
Any other questions?
Aggregate it down. I think we're good. We're 6 minutes past our usual 12:30. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Recap real quick. Events. We always like to close with events where people can come and meet us in person. So we will be at LibitConf. I'll be giving a talk over at LibitConf in early December. Right before that, actually, I'll be at Blockland Cleveland. And so there's an event over in Cleveland, blockchain, crypto, startup focused. I think as well, Joe Lubin from Consensus will be there, and a few other big names.
Sunny Cleveland, yeah. Opposed to gloomy San Diego. Exactly.
And then going into next year.
Where's LibitConf this year?
It is over in Chile.
Chile?
Yeah, Chile this year. So we'll be at LibitConf. And we'll probably update next week on where we're going to be in 2019. 2019 is starting. We're starting to get some stuff.
We're negotiating right now.
We're negotiating getting 2019. So we'll let you guys know at that point in time. So thanks a lot. Sorry if there were any audio issues. Some people were mentioning that we might have a bit of a mic gain up or down issue.
Kylan was telling me I was loud and you were soft.
I was okay?
Yeah.
And I'm the guy without the headphones.
Yeah.
So I can't even hear how loud I am, but I'm taking a good guess.
Apparently I was yelling. I'm just really excited about the hash wars. Sorry, guys.
The hash wars. Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. And tune in next week, Friday. Actually, we're going to be around Friday. Yeah, I guess someone might be around on Friday, day after Thanksgiving. We'll see. Take care. Thanks for the question, guys.